$5.7 billion. That's how much richer the world's billionaires got yesterday. And the day before that. And the day before that. Every single day for the past year, while you were working, sleeping, struggling to pay rent, the richest people on Earth made $5.7 billion. Not from working, not from building, just from existing. In 2024 alone, billionaire wealth surged by $2 trillion, 3 times faster than the year before. That's the second largest wealth explosion in recorded history. Meanwhile, the number of people living in poverty hasn't changed since 1990. Not a little, at all. We're watching the greatest wealth transfer in human history, and it's not going to you. This is the story of the $16 trillion club, how 3,028 people gained $2 trillion in 1 year, and why you're paying for it. Let me give you a number that will break your brain. $16.1 trillion. That's how much wealth the world's billionaires controlled in 2025, up from $13 trillion in 2023, an increase of $3 trillion in just 2 years. To put that in perspective, their combined wealth is now larger than the GDP of every country on Earth except the United States and China. Think about that for a second. 3,028 people control more wealth than the entire economic output of Russia, Japan, Germany, India, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Brazil, Canada, and South Korea combined. That's 10 of the world's largest economies. 3,000 people are richer than 10 countries with a combined population of over 2 billion people. Elon Musk's $491 billion fortune alone rivals the entire economy of Finland. Mark Zuckerberg's $212 billion net worth exceeds the GDP of Algeria, a country of 44 million people. Jeff Bezos's $253 billion fortune is larger than Hungary's entire economic output. Larry Ellison is worth more than New Zealand. Jensen Huang is worth more than Croatia. These aren't just rich people, they're walking nation-states. They have the economic power of entire countries. And unlike countries, they answer to no one. But here's what should terrify you. In 2024, the number of billionaires jumped from 2,565 to 2,769. That's 204 new billionaires in 12 months. Nearly 4 new billionaires every single week. Someone became a billionaire while you were reading that sentence. By 2025, that number hit 3,028. That's 247 more billionaires in less than a year. Do the math. That's almost 5 new billionaires created every single week. Not people who worked their way up from nothing. Not entrepreneurs who invented world-changing technology. Most of them inherited wealth, rode stock market bubbles, or exploited financial systems designed to make the rich richer and keep everyone else trapped. The wealth of the world's 10 richest men grew by almost $100 million per day in 2024. Let that sink in. $100 million per day. That's more than most people will earn in 1,000 lifetimes. That's more than the combined lifetime earnings of 5,000 American workers. And even if these 10 men lost 99% of their wealth overnight, if someone took away 99 cents of every dollar they own, they would still be billionaires. Still richer than everyone you know combined. Still have more money than they could spend in 10 lifetimes. In 2025, the top 10 richest gained another $523 billion in just 10 months. That's more than the market value of MasterCard, more than ExxonMobil, more than Netflix, Adobe, and Costco combined. Larry Ellison, the Oracle founder, gained $150 billion alone in 10 months. That's $16.6 million per hour. Every hour. Around the clock. Whether he's sleeping, eating, sailing on his yacht, or buying another Hawaiian island. $16.6 million per hour means he makes more in 60 minutes than a brain surgeon makes in a lifetime. More in 1 hour than a teacher earns in 200 years. This isn't normal. This isn't capitalism working as intended. This is something else. This is wealth accumulation on a scale that would make kings and emperors jealous. And it's accelerating. To understand how we got here, you need to understand 3 things: central banks, stock markets, and artificial intelligence. These 3 forces combined to create the greatest wealth transfer in human history, and they're not slowing down. First, central banks. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and central banks around the world printed trillions of dollars to save the economy. They slashed interest rates to 0. They bought bonds. They flooded financial markets with cheap money. The stated goal was noble: help small businesses survive lockdowns, keep workers employed, prevent economic collapse. But here's what actually happened. That money didn't go to workers. It didn't go to small businesses. It went straight into the stock market. It went into real estate. It went into assets that billionaires own. When you print trillions of dollars and inject it directly into financial markets, asset prices go up. It's basic economics. Stocks soar. Real estate explodes. Cryptocurrencies moon. Commodities rally. And who owns those assets? Not workers, not teachers, not nurses. Billionaires. They own the stocks. They own the real estate. They own the private equity funds. They own everything. Between 2020 and 2024, billionaire wealth doubled. Not because they worked twice as hard. Not because they innovated twice as much. Not because they provided twice as much value to society. But because central banks printed money, and that money inflated the value of everything they owned, while your wages stayed flat and your rent doubled. Let me give you a specific example. In March 2020, the Federal Reserve announced unlimited quantitative easing. Within weeks, the stock market bottomed and began the fastest recovery in history. Tech stocks exploded. Tesla stock went from $600 to $1,200 in 6 months. Amazon surged. Apple soared. Nvidia multiplied. And billionaires who owned those stocks got exponentially richer, while 40 million Americans filed for unemployment. Second, stock markets. In 2024 and 2025, global stock markets had one of the best runs in history. The S&P 500 hit record highs month after month. Tech stocks exploded on AI hype. Bitcoin surged past $100,000. Gold reached all-time highs above $2,700 per ounce. Investors made fortunes. But not normal investors, not you, billionaires. Because when you're already rich, you can afford to take risks. You can invest millions in speculative assets. You can hold through crashes without selling. You don't need to liquidate stocks to pay rent, or buy groceries, or cover medical bills. You just watch your wealth compound automatically. The average American has less than $5,000 in savings. Half of Americans couldn't cover a $500 emergency expense without going into debt. But billionaires? They have billions in liquid assets earning interest, dividends, and capital gains. Their money makes money while they sleep. While you work 40 hours a week to pay bills, their portfolios generate millions per hour on autopilot. And here's the kicker. In 2025, artificial intelligence became the biggest wealth creator in human history. AI optimism drove tech stocks to insane valuations that defied traditional metrics. Oracle stock soared 70% in 10 months on AI cloud revenue. Nvidia surged over 40% because every AI system needs their chips. Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft, all up 25 to 45%. Why? Because investors believe AI will automate everything, replace workers, cut labor costs, generate trillions in profits. And who owns those AI companies? Billionaires. Larry Ellison gained $150 billion in 2025 because Oracle sells AI cloud services to enterprises. Jensen Huang, Nvidia's CEO, gained over $50 billion because Nvidia makes the GPUs that power every AI model, from ChatGPT to autonomous vehicles. Larry Page and Sergey Brin, Google's founders, each gained over $60 billion because Alphabet controls AI search, cloud infrastructure, and DeepMind. Mark Zuckerberg gained $50 billion because Meta is building AI assistants, AR systems, and the metaverse. These men didn't invent anything revolutionary this year. They didn't work harder than you. They just own the company's position to profit from AI's rise. They're extracting wealth from a technological revolution they didn't create. And that's the system. Central banks print money. Stock markets inflate. AI hype accelerates. Billionaires get richer. Everyone else gets left behind. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Billionaire wealth doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't appear magically. It comes from you. Every dollar a billionaire gains is a dollar that didn't go to workers' wages, a dollar that didn't go to public services, a dollar that didn't go to infrastructure, education, or healthcare. Economists will tell you it's not a zero-sum game. They'll say wealth creation benefits everyone. But in practice, it is zero-sum. Because when corporations maximize profits for shareholders, they do it by minimizing costs. And the biggest cost? Labor. You. Between 2020 and 2025, corporate profits hit all-time highs. Record profits, quarter after quarter. But wages? Wages barely kept pace with inflation. In the United States, worker productivity increased 20% over the past decade. American workers are producing 20% more value per hour than they did 10 years ago. But median wages rose only 8%. Where did that extra 12% go? Not to workers, to shareholders, to executives, to billionaires. Companies like Amazon, Tesla, Meta, and Apple paid their workers less as a percentage of revenue, while funneling billions to stock buybacks and executive compensation. Amazon made over $500 billion in revenue in 2024. Jeff Bezos is worth $253 billion. But Amazon warehouse workers make $15 per hour, can't afford rent, and pee in bottles because bathroom breaks hurt productivity metrics. Tesla is worth over $1 trillion. Elon Musk is worth $491 billion. But Tesla factory workers report brutal conditions, mandatory overtime, and injuries from rushing production. Meta made over $100 billion in profit. Mark Zuckerberg is worth $212 billion. But Meta laid off 21,000 workers to boost stock prices. The system is working exactly as designed. Extract maximum value from labor, funnel it to capital. Meanwhile, government subsidies exploded. Tesla received over $7 billion in EV tax credits, government loans, and regulatory credits since its founding. SpaceX got multi-billion-dollar government contracts to launch satellites and resupply the space station. Amazon paid zero federal taxes for years, not reduced taxes, zero taxes, while receiving billions in municipal tax breaks to build warehouses. Apple uses Irish tax loopholes to avoid $50 billion in taxes. The system is rigged. Billionaires privatize profits and socialize losses. When their companies succeed, they keep the gains. When they fail, taxpayers bail them out. When banks collapsed in 2008, the government spent trillions to save them. When COVID hit, the government spent trillions again. But when student loan forgiveness was proposed, too expensive. When infrastructure investment was proposed, can't afford it. When healthcare reform was proposed, socialism. But trillions for billionaires? Always available. And then there's inflation. Between 2020 and 2024, inflation ravaged everyday people. The cost of housing doubled in many cities. Rent became unaffordable. Food prices surged 30%. Energy costs skyrocketed. Healthcare became even more expensive. Real wages declined. Purchasing power collapsed. But billionaires didn't feel it. They didn't suffer. Inflation didn't hurt them. It made them richer. Because they own assets that appreciate during inflation. Real estate goes up. Stocks go up. Commodities go up. Everything they own becomes more valuable, while everything you need becomes more expensive. While you paid $8 for eggs and $7 for gas, Elon Musk's net worth grew by $300 billion. While you chose between rent and groceries, Larry Ellison bought another Hawaiian island for $300 million. The wealth didn't trickle down, it gushed up. It concentrated, it compounded, and it's accelerating. Not all billionaires are created equal, and not all countries produce them at the same rate. In 2025, the United States led the world with 902 billionaires, up from 813 in 2024. Their combined wealth hit $7.6 trillion by Labor Day, an increase of 160% since 2017. That's 1/3 of all global billionaire wealth concentrated in one country. The US isn't just home to the most billionaires, it's home to the richest billionaires. 9 of the top 10 are American. That's not an accident, but the geography is shifting. Europe crossed 1,000 billionaires for the first time in 2024, growing at 6.1% annually. Old money families, luxury conglomerates, pharmaceutical giants, and banking dynasties continue accumulating wealth. China, despite Xi Jinping's government crackdowns on tech billionaires and regulatory pressure, still has hundreds of billionaires controlling trillions. Many have moved wealth offshore or into private holdings to avoid scrutiny. India's Mukesh Ambani remains the only Asian in the $100 billion club, worth $109.6 billion, ranking number 16 globally. His Reliance Industries controls telecommunications, retail, energy, and petrochemicals across India's booming economy. The Middle East is minting billionaires through sovereign wealth funds and oil money. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund alone manages $700 billion, investing in everything from Tesla to golf leagues. UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait's royal families control trillions through state-owned enterprises and investment vehicles. Africa is seeing its first wave of tech billionaires, though most wealth remains concentrated in resources and finance. And here's the pattern that never fails. The more unequal a country becomes, the faster billionaire wealth grows. The United States, with its deregulated markets, low taxes on capital gains, weak labor protections, expensive healthcare, unaffordable education, and political system controlled by corporate money, is the ultimate billionaire factory. It's optimized for wealth extraction. Countries with stronger social safety nets, higher taxes on wealth, robust worker protections, and limits on corporate power, like Scandinavia, have far fewer billionaires. Norway has 12 billionaires. Sweden has 45. Denmark has 9. It's not an accident. It's by design. Those countries chose social cohesion over billionaire creation. America chose billionaires. 5 trillionaires. That's how many the world is expected to have within the next decade, according to Oxfam's analysis of wealth accumulation trends. Not in 100 years, not in 50 years, in 10 years. By 2035, at least 5 people will be worth over $1 trillion each. Elon Musk is already on track, thanks to his Tesla pay package. If Tesla hits its market cap milestones, Musk could become the first trillionaire by 2027. Larry Ellison, Jensen Huang, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg are all strong candidates based on current wealth trajectories and AI boom predictions. $1 trillion. Let me put that in perspective because our brains can't actually comprehend numbers that large. If you earned $1 million per year, which is already more than 99% of people, it would take you 1 million years to earn $1 trillion. 1 million years. Humanity has only existed in its current form for about 300,000 years. If you spent $1 million per day, every single day, it would take you 2,740 years to spend $1 trillion. That means you would have needed to start spending during the Roman Empire and continue every day until now. $1 trillion is more than the GDP of most countries. It's more than Indonesia, Turkey, Switzerland, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, or Poland. It's unfathomable wealth. Wealth that gives you power over governments, media, markets, and people's lives. And here's what keeps me up at night. When someone is worth $1 trillion, they stop being a person. They stop being a citizen. They become a system, a force of nature, an institution. They can buy elections. They can fund private armies. They can control entire industries. They can dictate the future of technology, energy, transportation, and communication. They can decide what news you see, what products you buy, what jobs exist, what cities look like. That's not capitalism. That's not democracy. That's feudalism. Digital feudalism, where the ultra-rich own the infrastructure of life itself, and everyone else rents access just to survive. So what does this have to do with you? Why should you care that 3,028 people you'll never meet control $16 trillion? Everything. Because when billionaires gain $2 trillion in 1 year, that money comes from somewhere. It doesn't materialize from thin air. It comes from higher prices. It comes from stagnant wages. It comes from unaffordable housing. It comes from gutted public services. It comes from crumbling infrastructure. It comes from your labor being undervalued and your expenses being inflated. Every dollar they hoard is a dollar that doesn't circulate in the real economy. A dollar that doesn't pay teachers, nurses, or firefighters. A dollar that doesn't fix roads, schools, or hospitals. A dollar that doesn't fund research, innovation, or opportunity. The billionaire class now owns $16.1 trillion. That's enough to end global poverty 10 times over. enough to provide free healthcare and education to every human on Earth, enough to solve climate change, rebuild infrastructure, fund scientific research for generations, and still have trillions left over. But they won't. Because the system rewards hoarding, not sharing, extraction, not investment, wealth concentration, not wealth distribution, shareholders, not stakeholders, and it's getting worse. Wealth is now growing exponentially for the ultra-rich, while stagnating for everyone else. The gap between the richest and the rest is wider than at any point in modern history, wider than the Gilded Age, wider than pre-revolutionary France, wider than ancient Rome before its collapse. In 1990, having $1 billion was extraordinary, rare, newsworthy. In 2025, there are 3,028 billionaires, and by 2035, there will be more, many more, 5,000, maybe 10,000. Because once you have money, making more money becomes effortless. Your wealth compounds automatically. Your investments appreciate. Your assets inflate. You have access to opportunities normal people never see. Meanwhile, workers see real wages decline, savings evaporate, debts pile up, opportunity shrinks. We're not just witnessing inequality, we're witnessing a wealth singularity, a point where the rich become so rich that they exist in a fundamentally different reality. A reality where losing 99% of your wealth still leaves you a billionaire. A reality where making $100 million per day is normal. A reality where owning more wealth than entire nations is just another Tuesday. This didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen naturally. It happened by design. Over the past 40 years, governments have systematically dismantled regulations, slashed taxes on the wealthy, gutted labor protections, and prioritized corporate profits over worker welfare. It started in the 1980s with Reagan in America and Thatcher in Britain. The playbook was simple: cut taxes for the rich, deregulate financial markets, bust unions, privatize public assets, weaken environmental protections, eliminate corporate oversight. The narrative sold to the public was elegant. If we let the rich get richer, everyone benefits. Trickle-down economics, supply-side theory, the invisible hand of the market, job creators, economic growth, rising tide lifts all boats. But it was a lie, a deliberate lie, told to justify wealth extraction. Wealth didn't trickle down, it concentrated. The top 1% captured 90% of all wealth gains since 1980. Read that again, 90%. The bottom 50% saw their share of wealth decline, not stagnate, decline. Middle-class purchasing power collapsed. Social mobility disappeared. The American dream became a cruel joke. Work hard, they said. Get an education, they said. Play by the rules, they said. And millions did. They worked 2 jobs. They got degrees. They followed every rule. And they still can't afford a house, can't afford healthcare, can't afford to retire, can't afford to have kids. Because the system was rigged against them from the start. And the system perpetuates itself through a self-reinforcing cycle. Billionaires use their wealth to influence politics. They fund campaigns on both sides. They lobby governments to write favorable laws. They literally write tax codes through their lawyers and accountants. They buy media outlets and control narratives. They own think tanks that produce reports justifying inequality. They fund universities that teach economics designed to benefit capital over labor. They ensure the system that made them rich stays in place forever. It's a perfect loop. Money buys power. Power protects money. Repeat forever. So here's the question you need to sit with. Is this sustainable? Can a civilization survive when 3,028 people control $16 trillion, while billions struggle to afford food, housing, and healthcare? Can democracy function when billionaires can buy elections, control media, shape policy, and face no accountability? Can an economy thrive when wealth concentrates at the top while demand collapses at the bottom? Can society hold together when opportunity becomes hereditary and hard work means nothing? History says no. Emphatically no. Every civilization that allowed extreme wealth concentration eventually collapsed. Ancient Rome fell when wealth concentrated in patrician families, while plebeians starved. The French Revolution happened when aristocrats hoarded, while peasants couldn't buy bread. The Gilded Age led to violent labor movements, strikes, and eventually progressive reforms. The Great Depression happened after the Roaring Twenties created unsustainable inequality. Every time, the system becomes so unequal, so unjust, that it breaks. Sometimes through reform, sometimes through revolution, sometimes through economic collapse. But it always breaks. Always. We're at a crossroads, right? Now, today, this year. We can continue down this path and watch 5 people become trillionaires while poverty persists and democracy dies. Or we can demand a different system. A system where wealth is taxed fairly, where workers are paid their actual share of productivity gains, where public services are funded properly, where billionaires can't buy governments, where opportunity isn't determined by your parents' wealth, where a tiny elite doesn't own everything while everyone else fights for scraps. The $16 trillion club didn't build itself. We built it. Through our labor, through our consumption, through our political apathy, through our acceptance of a system that treats billionaires as heroes instead of symptoms of systemic failure. And if we built it, we can dismantle it. But only if we're willing to ask the hard questions. Only if we're willing to demand more than breadcrumbs while billionaires feast at banquets. Only if we're willing to say, enough is enough. This ends now. $5.7 billion per day. That's what billionaires made in 2024 while you struggled. What did you make? How much did your wages grow? How much did your rent increase? How much more expensive did healthcare become? And how long are you willing to let that continue before you demand change?